Hi, I'm James Kwantes, editor and publisher of Resource Opportunities, and joining me today is Soroush Nazarpour, CEO of NanoXplore. Hi, Soroush. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. How are you doing, James?
Good. How you doing?
Great.
Good. So this is a good year-end. This will be a good year-end recap. So I interviewed you in early February, I think it was. You know, you were trading on the TSX Venture at the time. Stock was at about $4. And you identified plastics and batteries as two big opportunities for the company, which produces graphene, an advanced material company. It's hard to categorize you because you do a lot of things. You're kind of breaking into a new space, right?
Yeah. So we categorize ourselves as a sustainability company. So we fit under this categories of, you know, from that covers all the way from recycled plastics to cars and EVs and stuff like that. So, but all of them is inherently you reduce the carbon emission through different type of path, and one is like a recycled plastic, or plastics in general. One is batteries, one is cements, one is all those things. So it's all sustainability.
Yeah. Okay. Well, why don't we start out with maybe you can go through like the big news from this past year, like the Techmer and Gerdau supply agreements, and then the latest acquisition, the plastic compounder, and then EPA approval as well.
Right. So technically the focus of this year, as well as it's going to be the next year as well, is the commercial development and partnerships with the customers and partners. So we have a bunch of target markets. We've talked about it before, but you know, we look at transportation, which is the #1 market for us. That's both on electric and non-electric type of transportation. We have content in large vehicles and trucks and buses, slowly getting into the smaller type vehicles, like a pickup trucks and stuff like that. So transportation is a big segment for us. We have also presence in industrial, agricultural, and constructions. We actually put them all together in one class. And that's a growing segment for our business. That has a concrete side of the business within it. Also, it has recycled plastic side of the business within it. So we can look into the activities of the company, either from the market side or from the solution side. So we have solutions in let's say plastics, composites, and those type of things with graphene. And then we have solutions on the concrete side, and then we have solutions on the anodes and cathodes and battery material space, right? So these are the main solutions that we provide, and then that goes into different type of markets and applications. Now, early this year, throughout the year, we announced a bunch of developments. We became a graduate to the main board of the Toronto Stock Exchange, so moved from venture to the main board. So that clearly translated to improve the volume and liquidity on our stock. We also announced a bunch of partnership, Techmer, Gerdau. We work with the different accounts currently, and these are, you know, they're in different type of applications and markets. The main solutions are the same, but we're working with a lot of those type of customers. Some purchasing, some buying right now, some developing, some at the pilot stage. So we have different accounts in different part of the sales process. So that's also we'll talk more about those for sure. And we announced EPA approval. So we are the first graphene company that actually got the EPA approval, which is the Environmental Protection Agency in US. So you can actually ship products to US and sell the product in US. But the first company which is outside of the R&D volume and R&D exemptions, right? So we have EPA approval at no annual limit in terms of supply volume. Normally you see annual limits of the amount of graphene you can actually sell and ship to US. Our approval does not have that limit. so we think, as far as we know, we're the only company in the world that has that approval for US. And we also, in terms of certification, we have announced before that we have approvals in Canada from Health and Environmental Canada. Also, we are leading the consortium of REACH for certifying graphene. REACH is just for Europe, and we are leading that consortium as well. So we're really in our business, we're focusing on providing the volume of supply, providing the cost, providing certifications in different jurisdictions, and also currently focus on product level certifications, which is a totally different subject. And how you certify a product, it depends on the market, depends on the OEMs, depends on the customer. So that's what we're doing currently.
Right.
So this covered the EPA, and the last one as well was the announcement of Canuck and the compounding partner for us. And at the same time, we provided financial guidance for next year.
So in the, well, maybe we can just start with the most recent, the Canuck Compounders acquisition. Is that a case of kind of taking it like a shortcut, maybe is not a good term, but, you know, like a company that had existing supply relationships and deals with larger companies, and who would be some of their larger customers?
So let's look at the acquisition more from a point of view of a strategy than from a single acquisition. So we have done acquisitions before, which was more getting us in front of the larger accounts. That Canuck, which is hopefully a first of a few more, is a more of a shift of the strategy toward being more present in the downstream applications of the graphene. If you followed us, we moved from supplying graphene as a raw material into supplying graphene as a solution, right? So it's very easy to say, like, we're not going to make just a powder, we're just going to provide a solution. But to provide a solution, so you're actually playing more downstream, and we moved one level down and trying to provide more of solutions of the graphene. And the main reason, because you know, we provide value to the next guy in the supply chain, and we found by the time that we are actually not capturing the lion's shares of the profit. It was just the guy right after us, which is getting the most of the profit, even though the interest is actually the end manufacturer. So we see that we call them level 3 or intermediary powder product suppliers, our compound suppliers. These guys are capturing quite a lot of profit. So by the time we start to move more downstream, not just to provide the powder, provide solutions with the powder, in other words, provide compounds of graphene with the plastics, compound of graphene with recycled plastics, compound of the graphene in admixtures, which is what goes to concrete business, or let's say anode paste. And these are the type of intermediary products. And if you see, we're shifting more toward those type of products,
yeah,
because we think that it's the best protection first for us is, you know, powder down the road one day will be commoditized, right? So a powder supplier will have extra challenges in the future when there are other suppliers in different jurisdictions that are going to come, and it's natural. If you start making a lot of money, the other people are going to also participate. So powder has this challenge, but solutions, it quite customized per customer, right? And they have a much better value add and value proposition than just the pure powder, having in mind that the value is coming from the powder, but the solution provider is actually capturing the profit. So we're moving the business a little bit more toward the downstream applications of the graphene. So
yeah, so kind of like a move from, I mean, hanging on to that, you know, like the sort of lower margin business in the huge markets, to like sort of more of a higher margin in a niche market, like more engineering. Is that a fair?
I mean, not on the graphene side, because there are other graphene suppliers that they have low volume of production, but the selling price for them is like $100 per kg or something like that. We're not talking about the powder level. We're talking about the next in the chain, which is like master batch compound of the graphene with liquids, with engineered products. So we're moving toward that, because we also saw that the interest we are getting, like we have more than 200 people in our sales funnel, and these are, majority of them are inbound calls. They come and find us, right? So we saw that they're actually at quite far away from us in the supply chain. They're like at the end of it. So there's a few steps remain to get to them, right? So as a result of that, we have some, we have done some announcement like Techmer, for instance. Techmer is a great partner to us, but they're compounder. They're not the user of the product. They actually provide to another customer, which is like in consumer packaging and stuff like that. So they are intermediary, and they turn our product to something usable for them, right? By the time we see that, I mean, that's a great partner, but the customers comes to us, and we like to be in contact with the directly with the end user, or let's say end manufacturer, right? So we're naturally being asked to play more toward things that they buy. They don't buy the powder. They buy the solution. They buy a liquid with graphene. They buy a plastic already compounded with graphene. That's what they buy. So we are slowly providing those type of products. So we're expanding the product offering with graphene and also graphene enhanced solutions.
Okay, so has the product development team sort of grown quite a bit? Like, what's sort of the head count in that?
Yeah, I think we have close to 20 people now, or maybe even more, active in those type of applications and product development. But also, customers are also doing a lot more work than before. So they're actually, because we don't have the resources to really go through 200 different accounts, right? There's too many of them, and we accept that when the partner is trying to do that. And in some cases, we have partner that has got to the point that they're ready to go, and they're asking us to support them by playing a little bit more in downstream and providing them something that they can buy, right? Rather than bringing in other partners. So again, different accounts, different situations, but all of them are saying that moving a bit downstream would increase our let's say absolute profits, but gross margin drops, but the sales growth is higher. So it's a little bit of a change in our financials you would see in the next couple of quarters, but there's a bit more growth of the sales that we'll see. Profits are going to be absolute number going to be higher because you're capturing also the third level of the supply chain, the intermediate products, but the gross margin as a percentage going to be lower. So, which is very typical.
Bigger pie. In the last interview, you mentioned that Volvo and PACCAR are your the largest customers. Is that still the case?
Yeah.
Okay.
Volvo has done quite good in the chip shortage. So in the last couple of quarters, we've been really dealing with the chip shortage. It's the same chip shortage problem in the cars that you have in trucks and buses and heavy vehicles. We found Volvo's done a bit better than PACCAR, but those are the main customers of the company, and we're happy to have them.
Can you talk a bit on Techmer? Can you talk a little bit about sort of what some of their products are? I don't think they're very well known companies. So can you just sort of break it down to what?
Techmer is actually a very well-known company in the market that they're active.
Well, right? In the market, but generally speaking, right?
So they're one of the largest compounders in US, and they're a great business, great partner to us. That we look at, we look at consumer packaging type products, which is both flexible packaging and rigid packaging. Flexible packaging means like films, plastic films, and rigid packaging means containers, for instance. Those are the type of applications that we were active with them and developing solutions with them.
So like storage bins or smaller stuff?
It could be as a storage bins all the way to plastic films, right? So plastic films are, let's call it trash bag, like it's a plastic film.
Right. Now, so Gerdau, I kind of thought like they're Brazil's biggest steel producer, I think, right? So they make a lot of rebar. So I kind of thought like graphene enhanced concrete as sort of almost replacing rebar, but there's a role on for the rebar as well with graphene, right? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so rebars are coated normally with polyurethane to improve the corrosion lifetime. and there's always a tendency to improve that corrosion lifetime for the rebars, so they have a longer lifetime. So graphene, I mean, we're not the first one in the world saying about improving corrosion with adding graphene to polyurethane. It's regardless of what they're coating that thing on. I mean, it could be rebar, could be a metal piece everywhere, anywhere that there's corrosion, polyurethane coating improves the lifetime against corrosion. So then graphene added to the polyurethane coating also improves further the corrosion lifetime. So that's something that has been reported out there as well. I think there has been people using that in the market as well right now. So that's one side of the activities. The other side of the activity is the concrete.
And they're doing a push into the graphene enhanced concrete, right?
Yeah, so the concrete is, I think concrete is, many people ask, what is that, killer app that, graphene goes out and stuff. I normally don't like to say it's a killer app, but concrete is becoming very interesting. And it's not an old thing. It's like last couple of maybe quarters, there's a ton of discussions about concrete. One of the interesting thing about concrete is it's not that customer specific. It looks like majority are using very similar type of concrete composition, right? Let's say, and graphene performance is very consistent from one concrete guy to the next, right? These are interesting because inherently it reduces the product development cycle, which is like long, right? In general, those type of applications, you're too customized. Everything is different than from one to the other customer, right? Concrete is the one that looks to be an interesting market. I'm personally very hopeful about graphene introduction in the concrete market. I think it will become the #1 market of graphene in terms of volume. Probably not necessarily the cost or the dollar value, because the loading level is low in the concrete, even though the volume is really high. I think there are other applications like some developments are happening in the asphalt type market, and some are happening in rubber side. These are also very large volume type applications, but concrete I think it's going to be one of the main markets of the graphene. And graphene has a lot of different application here and there, but the volume wise, dollar wise, concrete looks to be very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, on the sustainability front too, right? I think concrete's like 6 or 7% of greenhouse gas emissions globally, concrete production.
There's for sure there's a push toward reducing carbon emission in any application, especially as some manufacturer going to end up paying for it, right? So that puts more push on finding substitutes and replacement to reduce the emission. So that's for sure. The interest is there to find solutions, but they're also very, very, very cost sensitive. These are very cost sensitive applications and markets. We've found that the interest of the concrete market is to find solutions that are better, in the strength and this and reduction of the GHGs, but also cheaper solutions, something that actually brings cost reduction, or at least it's cost neutral, right? So, so it is a great market for graphene, but I would say art, because we know there's a lot of development out there about graphene, but in concrete, but we found them at a pretty hefty premium to the cost of the concrete. I think that will be a little bit of a roadblock for those type of suppliers. There's a lot of stuff happening in Manchester about that, but even though it brings a lot of excitement, I mean, we saw at some of those cost structure, and it's just doesn't look like those are the type of solution that really get traction in the market. You're talking about it's very low cost, those type of applications. So we think our type of product in terms of cost and volume fits very well with the cement type applications. Now, currently, we don't have anyone that is really competing with us in that part of the graphene market. But we anticipate that if what we're seeing in the concrete market happening and continuing, there will be new competitors coming just for that part of the market.
So maybe next year we'll see a news release on the concrete, a concrete supply deal potentially.
Yeah, we're working with quite a few of those guys. Like it was a wave of interest that came to us because like they need a lot of graphene. Like it's just smallest trial they do, there's a lot of graphene they need. And you know, there's a ton of people talk about graphene, but if you call them and say, give me just a bag, like a ton of graphene in a big bag, like just I would like to know who actually can produce. Like a ton of graphene in a big bag, it's a problem for a majority of the people out there to solve.
Well, I mean, in that respect, you know, it's a bit similar to the junior mining companies that I cover. You know, there's a lot of BS, if I can be frank, right? And you know, you see the same thing in graphene. And I should ask you, like, I want to ask you about something. You know, you hear chatter sometimes, like or you see chatter online. I've even heard it from other graphene players that are trying to break into the space. You know, that what NanoXplore produces is not graphene; it's some kind of blend, or you know, like that skepticism. How do you address that, and where's that? You know?
Okay, let me add 2 ways. So
you must have heard it yourself, right?
I mean, I heard it from some investment I have not heard it from the customers and partners of us, or people in graphenes. I did not hear from them. I mean, I heard many times from other graphene companies that we're not selling our graphene at $10 per kilo or $11 per kilo. Our cost is like many times higher than our selling price. So we're absorbing loss to open the market. I heard that from the graphene market. Now, talking about quality and stuff. So let me answer 2 ways. First, the only people care about the quality of the graphene are the non-graphene producers. Like the company, they talk about graphene, but they don't really produce it. In the market, no customer is actually asking about, okay, what is the quality of your graphene versus the quality of the other guy, right? They always say, let's put in a product, see what's the performance. And we have these like 3 pages of the performance requirement that you have to pass. If you pass those, you go to the next step, look at your financial model, business case, what's the cost for us? And then afterwards, they go to your supply consistency, your certification of the plant, if you have ISO. So there's a commercial process that nowhere in that commercial process, it dependent on your powder. It depends on what your powder does. Okay. So I've brought it up a few times with the investment community that let's assume NanoXplore product is the worst product in the world. All right. Well, any type of metrics you talk. Okay, we are the worst. If customers pay for it, it's not really the worst product in the world because it's actually paying, right? So I would put it as like we can have discussion that, oh, graphene is a single layer product only. We don't do single layer, we do 6 to 10 layers, and we have been very transparent about that. So if someone says, oh, you guys don't make graphene because graphene is single layer, I would say first, ISO standard is under 10. Second, we used to do 2 and 3 layers. We found that it's just too fluffy. The shipping cost is too much. It's too hard to integrate. We actually reduced exfoliation to get to 6 to 10 because that's the best cost and performance ratio. It's the best. So we moved our product from thinner to a bit thicker because we think that works better. And at the end of the day, you know, people talk. It's
Well, some of it might be, you know, I'm sure the EPA approval was met with, you know, with consternation and with some, like, surely there were other graphene players who were going for that. But can you talk about like the implications of that? You know, it was sort of a short news release, but I think it'll be pretty significant. And what does it allow you to do that you couldn't do before?
So EPA first, well, when it comes to the EPA, we were very surprised that EPA doesn't exist. You don't want to be the first company doing that because it's very expensive to do that, right? And there are other graphene companies in the US. So we were very surprised that the EPA really doesn't recognize graphene at the time that we started the process, right? So we were forced to do it. We didn't want to do the EPA. US, like we're based in Canada, as well to ship. So we thought, well, there's a couple of graphene companies in the US. It turns out that within their space, within their spec sheet and data sheet, they call their product within the graphite category. So they don't need to do those type of certifications.
Oh, I see.
That's borderline illegal, right? You just can't call something else, so you don't get the certifications.
Right.
And so we were forced to do that. Then afterwards, some people said, well, you actually did that to stop other people from selling graphene into US. One of our problems is we are the only one producing graphene. So customers are always very uncomfortable with the fact that we have one plant and we're the only one making it. So we always like to have other people start producing graphene, especially in different jurisdictions, get the cost down. It helps the market as a whole. It helps us. So some level of competition is good, because we don't want to be the only one in the world saying something, because people take it a little bit with a grain of salt and they don't trust you, right? So it's tougher to sell. So EPA at this point, we heard some of the other guys are unhappy that we got our product certified. We actually certified GrapheneBlack. Some said that, well, you are certifying your thing, calling it graphene, and it's different from my graphene. No, we certified GrapheneBlack, what we produce. It has nothing to do with the other people in the world. They can go through the process and certify their thing, but it takes 3 years. So people are unhappy that why we didn't really do it for the graphene. Like, well, we're doing for our own company, right? And then our own product. Yeah. So it is not in any way some sort of a monopoly. But if the other graphene companies don't step up and go get certified their products, it becomes a kind of like we're the only product certified to be sold in the US. So still we know that some other companies, they're continuing to sell it as graphite, which is fine. But the EPA is very unhappy now since the category is there, and we know there has been inquiries about, okay, is your product is graphene? And customers are also seeing it. So we have content in Ford. And when you have content in Ford, you have graphene, or let's say GrapheneBlack is within the procurement list of the accepted materials for Ford. And that requires EPA, right? So another competitor of us has had products in Ford. And when that thing came, well, you know, Ford will recognize quickly that that was not the product that has been certified. So it brought a lot of uncertainties for a few people in the application side.
But you already have products in OEMs prior to the EPA through the compounders.
It depends on what you're selling, right? So sometimes you sell like a compounded product. It depends how you're actually producing it, where you're doing the compounding. EPA gives you flexibility to actually, for instance, in our case, we can compound within our facilities in US now, which we didn't have the right before. So it brings you some stuff, and we're actually extending it. So we don't have the EPA for all the markets out there. Like we have a few markets already approved. So we're extending it to other markets as well. We're in that discussion already with EPA to have more markets to add to that list. But yeah, it's just what we do a little bit is different than what the rest of the graphene guys is doing, and even we disclose and we would like them to go through the normal process, which you make it, you certify it, you sell it, right? There's nothing else than that. They're not doing that.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about VoltaXplore. We haven't really touched on that one. That's a big one. How's the plant coming, and what's battery day going to look like?
So plant is going to be up and running Q1. Okay. So we will start making 18650 cylindrical cells out of that facility. So battery 2, well, after the successful commissioning of the pilot, pilot is a 1 MWh facility. So it's a decent size. It's not pilot really. It's like we talk about pilot, we assume something is small. That's actually I would say 30,000-40,000 square feet facility in west of Montreal, which for now it's unknown location to the market. But we will when we have everything set up and commissioned, we will invite people to come and see the facility.
So shareholders will be able to tour through there? Oh.
Yeah, we'll actually have a battery day for everybody. We will announce that anyone wants to come and see. They're very well. It's going to be sometime in the Q2, so the weather is also going to be okay in Montreal. So it's a fun to come and see. But we also will disclose the performance, because we kept the performance because we said we want the performance to be validated in the commercial production setting.
Right.
So we'll talk about the result of the full cell that has the technology in it.
So you don't want to say too much about the details, like the specs yet.
No, the reality is we avoided saying that because, again, there's a lot of noise about the batteries out there. The reality is people are all showing great PowerPoints in the lab and stuff like that. Now, some are very successful, raising billions and billions too, right? We rather to disclose the real performance than what we got in the lab and why we started this. Of course, we're seeing something valuable that we are going through the process, but we want to make sure that we will report the cell level result. So cell level result translates into the product. Like you can actually talk about, okay, how longer the car can drive with these batteries, right? You can ask. But if I talk about like, okay, this is the capacity of the anode, doesn't really mean anything, right? So, and it's also in the lab setting. So everything could be a little bit elevated in the lab setting. So we want to make sure what we are reporting is replicable in the real world applications.
Okay, so VoltaXplore, are you getting some interest from OEMs?
Sure. There's not enough batteries out there, so everyone is looking for batteries.
Mm-hmm. And how quickly could you ramp that up? Like, might you look at getting a bigger partner in to help fund future plants and so on, or the first gigafactory?
Well, first we got to get to the go no go, right? So we have to build the pilot, see the result, see the costing, and get some of those key numbers for our feasibility report done to clearly know that there's a business. And then afterwards, if we pass the go no go, then the next story starts. So again, we're more inclined toward building a 10 gigawatt hour in 2 phases, which is a 2+8. If we pass the go no go, our target is to have the 2 gigawatt up and running by 2024 and add another 8 by 2026, right? So we're breaking it to 2 parts. There's a lot of reasons for that. Basically, for the first phase, we don't need an OEM partner. Doesn't mean we're not going to do an OEM partner, or doesn't mean we are not going to have a partner or have a partner, but we don't need for the 2 gigawatt hour to have really any partner involved, because it's a smaller output, but still it's the first gigafactory of Canada really built, right? There's a ton of, again, talks. But if we pass the go no go position and we're comfortable about the steps, I think 2024 we should be able to have some sell out and just have some batteries provided to some customers. We have interest because of our business already in the truck and bus. We really have interest in that side of the market. This is a part of the market that requires lower number of the cells because they just don't make enough truck versus enough like it's cars. Like trucks are lower number, they get more cells, but in general the absolute number is lower. So that's a part of the business we like to capture. Also, one of the challenges, I've been very vocal about that. I know it sounds a little bit of contrarian, but having OEM partner put huge downward pressure on your pricing, and it commoditizes the battery plants. Like this is, imagine you're investing, I don't know, like for 2 gigawatts, probably $400 million of investment. You gotta get return. You can't really live with a 25% gross margin business, and this type of OEM partners, since they give you really an offtake for all those cells, and they reduce the risk of the sell side of the business, it reduces the gross margin significantly. And when it does, is your financial model doesn't really cover the depreciation of your assets or the capital investments, right? So that starts to really change the strategy a little bit. So we would like to make sure that the first part of our business creates enough profit to justify further investment, and then maybe for sure at the 8 gigawatt hour, you then need like OEM part agreements and stuff, but you need that first part to generate enough profit that makes sense to build such a thing, right?
Yeah, so partnering with the battery, like existing battery manufacturer might make more sense.
Existing battery manufacturer, maybe grid storage customers and partners. There are a lot of different ways you can actually go. We are not lacking interest in that. There's a lot of interest. But again, let's go through the go-no-go position. Let's make sure we're actually building it. Then we talk about who is going to be a best partner for us.
What's Battery Day going to look like? Can you give any details on what vision you have for that?
Well, it's not going to be like a Tesla Battery Day. Okay, it's different. It's called Battery Day too, but it's not going to be like that. So you're not going to be in the cars and the horn and stuff like that.
I hope it has the same effect on the share price though.
Share price. I mean, let's talk about business. So we think that the Battery Day is going to be a combination of having a tour of the facility and seeing some presentations about the technical performance of the thing at the cell, just letting people to actually see and touch the cells, right? So that's the concept. It really depends on which part of pandemic we will be at the time.
Yeah, like everything else.
It's a big question all the time. At least that's what we have in mind now.
Okay. I guess we can wrap it up soon, but like sort of on a personal level, like what drives you, Soroush? Like what kind of drives and motivates you, and what keeps you up at night regarding NanoXplore?
So what keeps me up at night is my like 22-month-old baby girl. So that keeps me up at night for sure.
Right.
But you know, it's an interesting, it's an interesting time for both Nano and Volta, right? So NanoXplore, we are at that commercial stage that we are moving from, a more of a startup-y type company to a more of a, growth stage and value generating cash flow and talking about the EBITDAs. So that's an interesting transition. It takes a lot of work. So I know that people always look when the stock goes up, so these guys are doing good, stock goes down, these guys are doing bad. So it doesn't work like that. In real world, for getting something from nothing all the way to here, it's been about 10 years for me. So we just a couple of weeks ago, it was the 10 years anniversary of NanoXplore. It's a lot of work. And it's interesting because in 10 years, we became this company. The next 10 years, what we will be, right? So there's always the question that drives us. For me, it's more than a business, and it's not really about making money now. It's really personal, just making sure that you have not wasted the last 10 years of your life, and you're seeing a product and technology. You want to see that in the market, in real world application. That's very fulfilling personally. And Volta is a different beast. Volta is it's very, very, very difficult to make batteries. That's why not so many people in the world can make batteries, So when I look at companies like Tesla, like the inherent value that is behind making battery cells, and we know how difficult and complex those things are, there's a ton of value. So I understand that many people do not recognize that value, but it's a lot of work to get that going. So it's interesting for us. We, 5-6 years ago, we started battery discussion. We kind of like didn't know anything about battery. Now we are standing in a position that we're very happy with what we have. We just want to make sure we actually can replicate in the real world. And if that's the case, we should see very interesting type of batteries out there, which are very unique in terms of performance, even though it's built the same way that everyone builds a battery. So it's great to be the first company in Canada as well to build that size facility. It's great to support the Canadian supply chain when it comes to EV. That part is actually missing in Canada. I understand that many of the large companies are talking with the governments, both in provincial and federal level, to have battery in place. But there are a handful of companies in the world that actually have done batteries before. So,
and for your batteries, can you source all the materials from Canada?
That's the concept, to provide everything from Canada, to have a local supply chain. Um, Still, it's early for us to set up offtakes in place. But we are confident that in Quebec, there's a ton of raw materials there. You know, cobalt always is an issue, right? Everywhere you go. So that's a worldwide problem. But otherwise, the rest of the stuff actually exists in Canada.
Speaking of Tesla, like, I don't think I've ever heard Elon Musk say the word graphene, but, the way he talks about some of their products and, some of their hires, surely they are using graphene in their products. They must be. It fits all the sort of all the descriptions.
Ask him.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so 10 years out, what is your vision for NanoXplore, Soroush?
Yeah. So, well, next 10 years, first we got to go through the existing plant, right? So to place the products, get some of those clients to honor the forecast and get the products and their products and go to market, right? So for us, then very soon it's going to be expanding the production, having different production facilities. More, I would say, in North America, still South America, North America. This is still, we're still quite a little bit far from having production in Europe, but we'll see that having more facilities in North America, most likely in US, and providing the products, graphene products to the different segments. Like the thing about graphene, which is also a blessing and a curse at the same time, it goes everywhere. So you just constantly have to refocus on things that are quicker to the market. But many people in nano, they say that they have a full life career in graphene. It's just the beginning of the graphene. It's gonna be around. And it's going to be years and years and years that we will hear from graphene going to different applications. It already passed the stage that this technology is going to be in the market, because many technology at this level is already dead. Like that, it's known that they're not going to really work. It's already past that level, so it's going to the application. So customers, they want it, they see it, they like it, but it's a process that takes years and years and years, and constantly going to grow, right? So I think the 10 years is a growth, next 10 years is very growing for the graphene market. And Volta is going to be having those gigafactories up and running and selling some cells.
On the graphene plant, what's kind of the run rate now? And like looking out 1 year, 2 years, where do you, like, are you going to be able to add more capacity?
I think we should add more capacity. The market, it's what I feel, and also some of the folks in the graphene markets are seeing is that first step of the hockey stick coming in 2023, 2024. So in reality, we had the AGM yesterday, I talked about that. It's very difficult to predict, right? So there's always doubt there. But what we see from some of the forecasts from the clients, some of the feedbacks from other graphene producers and the analysts in the market, we all see some hockey stick coming in that time frame, 2023, 2024. And you can actually extrapolate the carbon fiber market history of the carbon fiber market with the graphene, and it just happened. The growth of the carbon fiber market happened few years after the first supplier of the carbon fiber was able to get the cost down and brought the volume, right? So if that happens, I believe history repeats itself. Then it kind of like makes sense what we did translating into the market growth for the whole graphene market, not just for us, for everyone. And from there, the growth continues, right? The growth happens and the hockey stick happens. It's tough to know the slope of the hockey stick, how long it's gonna last, but it eventually get to a more of a slower growth and just continues to grow, right? So right. I think that's the part of the graphene market we are in the next 2-3 years seeing that. But again, none of us know everything, so it's just
is that first supplier of the carbon fiber that sort of broke through?
Yeah.
Are they still around? Are they still around? Who is
Yeah,
that? What is that company?
I don't remember the name. They're just big Japanese.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I
Just curious about the size of the company.
They are a couple of hundred of billions of dollars now, so they're very large. But this is not just they're a conglomerate, the Japanese conglomerate.
Right.
They're not just carbon fiber, so it was not just carbon fiber get them there, but these are big Japanese companies. They have done that.
Sounds good.
Hey.
Thanks for your time, Soroush.
Thank you very much, and happy Christmas.
Happy Christmas. All the best in the new year. I'm sure we'll talk again then.
Take care.